ID, the Future, a podcast about evolution and intelligent design.
Welcome to ID the Future. I'm your host, Andrew McDiarmid. Well, today I welcome to the podcast David Coppedge to discuss a recent example of intelligent design in action. Scientists using AI to detect evidence of intelligent design. David Coppedge is a freelance science reporter in Southern California. He worked at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory for 14 years on the Cassini mission to Saturn, until he was ousted in 2011 for sharing material on intelligent design, a discriminatory action that led to a nationally publicized court trial in 2012. Discovery Institute supported his case, but a lone judge ruled against him without explanation. He has been a board member of Illustra Media since its founding and serves as their science consultant. A nature photographer, outdoorsman, and musician, David holds BS degrees in science education and in physics, and gives presentations on ID and other scientific subjects. David, welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
So music, do you play an instrument or do you sing?
I play the French horn, and I also write compositions for orchestra and band.
Oh, nice.
Home system. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
And have you had a chance in recent times to hear a band play your compositions?
Yes, actually, I wrote a march for the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11, and it was premiered by the U.S. Air Force Band.
Wow, that's awesome. I'd love to hear that. Well, we're not talking about music today, but I was curious about that. Now, you write regularly at our flagship news and commentary site, evolutionnews.org. You write about plants and animals that exhibit evidence of design and irreducible complexity. You also occasionally highlight stories of intelligent design in action, from pattern matching in archaeology to the uncovering of ancient hidden cities with the forest-penetrating technology of LiDAR in the Amazon rainforest. You wrote recently of another example of intelligent design in action that I wanted to discuss with you today. Scientists who are using AI to analyze photographs of the Nazca Plain in Peru to find possible sites of geoglyphs. Now tell us, what are geoglyphs?
Geoglyphs are patterns that were made by human beings, of which the Nazca drawings are one of the most famous examples. But in other words, they're earthworks. They could be mounds of dirt or burial mounds or pyramids or any kind of thing. Geological glyphs, in other words, writings or symbols that were created by human beings.
Okay, got it. Using elements from the earth, like stone, gravel, and the earth itself. Well, before we get to the details of this pretty cool story, I want to give listeners a little review of the basics of design detection. Now, back in 1998, mathematician William Dembski published his landmark book, The Design Inference, wherein he presented a rigorous method of detecting design in nature. The design inference uncovers intelligent causes by isolating the key trademark of intelligent causes, specified events of small probability. Just about anything that happens is highly improbable, but when a highly improbable event is also specified, in other words, it conforms to an independently given pattern, undirected natural processes or causes lose their explanatory power. So, design inferences can be found in a range of scientific pursuits, from forensic science to research into the origins of life to the whole search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Now, David, you demonstrate a firm grasp of design detection. How would you explain the importance of Dembski's explanatory filter for detecting design?
Well, a firm grasp might be in scare quotes or something. I struggled through the Design Inference 2.0 that came out a couple of years ago with Winston Ewart and William Dembski. A lot of it was very intuitive, the first part, and he uses a lot of good analogies that help. But when he gets into the Bayesian inference and symbolic logic and set theory and equations and stuff, I struggled through it, but I got the gist of it. So anyway, the importance of the design inference is that it adds rigor to our intuitions. In other words, we all do design detection all the time. You step outside, you see water on the sidewalk, and you're asking, did it rain last night, or did a water truck come by and spray my sidewalk? So the first would be a natural cause. The second would be an intelligent cause. Maybe not super intelligent, but in other words, it was intentional. Somebody did it on purpose. And so what the design inference tries to do is to separate natural causes and chance from intentional causes. And that's what Dembski's original design filter was designed to do, was to give you a flow chart so that you could separate out what is natural from what was intentional. And it's important to stress that the design inference is really only asking one simple question. Was something designed or not designed? Okay, you got those two choices. It's like being at the top of a ridge line and seeing which way a marble is going to roll, to the east or to the west. And naturally, once it starts rolling, there's a lot of follow-up questions that ensue that are very important, like, well, who rolled this marble and why did he roll this marble? But those are beyond the actual design inference itself. It's just trying to answer the question, was something natural or chance, or was it intentionally designed?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And I'm glad you mentioned that this is something we do all the time. When we walk out of our house, even in our house, everywhere. Doug Axe calls it the design intuition, that we are all born with this innate ability to recognize the handiwork of an intelligent agent, being intelligent agents ourselves.
Yes, and that's what makes detective stories so engaging. And who done it? Was it a murder, or did the guy just die of a heart attack, or what? And so we do this kind of thing all the time. I like to go out with my drone and take nature photographs. And I found this one place that was, this relates to our story about the Nazca lines, as I'll illustrate. But I found this area out in the desert that has beautiful artwork of trees on the ground. I mean, it looks like artwork. They're just beautiful designs. And you can't really see them unless you get up high with a drone looking down at them.
Huh.
And I call them dendrites, but actually they're perfectly natural. They're drainage patterns from rainwater on a shallow slope, and it starts carving these ditches that get bigger and bigger, and they form these beautiful fractal patterns that look like works of art. But those can be explained naturally, and so the design inference always gives preference to natural or chance causes by default, and you have to prove that something was intelligently designed. And so that's why the design inference is robust against false positives. Now, a false positive would be saying that something was designed when it really wasn't, okay? Like looking at those tree patterns and saying, oh, somebody did that. The design inference is robust against that, and Dembski explains this in his book, No Free Lunch, which is another good book on the design inference. But it can make false negatives. There's a statue, or a sculpture, rather, downtown at the Museum of Modern Art in Los Angeles that looks like somebody just took a whole bunch of airplane parts and welded them all together. It looks like it's just a big pile of junk, but it's on a pedestal and it's art. So somebody might look at that and say, that was not designed, but it was. So that would be a false negative. And yeah, the design inference can make mistakes like that because it gives preference to saying something is not designed unless it's rigorously shown to be.
Yeah, very good point. We can see things that arose naturally and consider them works of art. And we can also look at works of art, especially nowadays, and think maybe they were just thrown together by some natural process.
Yeah, somebody might have just poured paint on a canvas and drove over it with their car and called that art.
Right.
But you look at the difference between Mount Rushmore, which has clearly, we know the history of that. But if you didn't know, you'd be able to tell the difference between that and the Old Man of the Mountain, just a shape on a mountainside that looks like a face, but could occur naturally. And so that's what the design inference does, is try to separate intentional from natural causes.
Right. Yeah, and I'm very glad that we have this explanatory filter, this ability to do that. Well, let's talk about scientists who are using artificial intelligence to make design inferences. You call it intelligent design squared. Intelligent agents designing machine intelligence that is capable of detecting intelligent design. The Nazca Pampa is designated a World Heritage Site by UNESCO because of its immense geoglyphs, averaging 90 meters in length. Can you describe this location in more detail? And for those not familiar with what geoglyphs look like, Can you describe them?
Yes, I have not been to this area. I only know about it by what I read and the pictures I see. I think a lot of people have heard about it because the it's called by the World Heritage Site. UNESCO calls it, the best example of geoglyphs in the world. And these things are 100 yards long, many of them. And there's actually two types. There's the kind that have been carved into the sand, by digging ditches or whatever. And then so those are the line type, and the relief type are when they've lined up stones on top of the ground. And so those are two classifications of these things. And I want to hasten to add, I'm not an expert on the Nazca culture. I don't know anything about why they made these things. They were said to have been made starting around 100 BC, all the way possibly into the Middle Ages of Europe. So possibly 1,000 years, people in this area were making these works of art. We don't know why they did it or what they were trying to communicate, but we can tell that they were designed.
Right. And there is debate about why these geoglyphs were made or what they're trying to communicate. But thankfully, we don't need to worry about the why with the design filter. We use it to see if chance and natural law should be considered or ruled out, and confirm whether something is the product of a designing intelligence. Now, they've been looking for geoglyphs for about a century now. How has the technology advanced over the years?
Well, at first, you had to either get up on a mountain to look down and see these things, or else just walk around and notice that, wow, this is an unusual row of stones or an unusual line. It seems to be drawing an animal or something. And they started finding these early in the 20th century, and they would find maybe a new one a year, one or two a year. But then with aircraft and the ability to fly and look down over them, they began to find more. And now there's been another quantum leap of discovery of these geoglyphs with the use of AI. Because with AI, they can analyze the patterns that aircraft see and the maps and see things that are very faint to see with the human eye. But AI can determine that, yes, something was designed and not natural.
Right. Yeah, AI is coming into our lives in lots of different ways these days. And as you know in your article, AI can be a good tool. It just shouldn't be doing all the thinking for us. Tell us what the researchers did to set up and train their AI model.
Well, they first mapped the whole area, the whole 290 square miles where these geoglyphs exist. And then they cut it all up into segments, 10 centimeters in size. And they trained their AI model on, first of all, they trained it on known geoglyphs so that the model would know what a geoglyph looks like. And then they trained it on negative models, which are not designed. So they're giving it the ability to detect intentional lines versus just natural lines. And so they trained this and came up with 1,309 hotspots. In other words, the spots that the AI model thought could be geoglyphs. And so then the scientists ranked these in ranks 1, 2, or 3 based on how probable they were actual geoglyphs. And they ended up with about 303 new geoglyphs that were not known previously.
Wow. Yeah, it's a good example of how the scientists have to do the legwork first to train the model and take all the pictures to feed the model, and then to sift through what the model provides as, hey, you might want to look at this and proceed from there.
And to show the human input into this, they had to double check what the AI came up with. So they had all these hotspots, but they had to go out there on foot and fly drones, and they actually spent like 2,600 extra hours of work analyzing what the AI model did. So that's why I call it the design inference squared, because it took human inference plus machine inference, and the humans, of course, designed the machines that did the inference. So it's like a cubicle arrangement of intelligence design inference. But they had to do a lot of follow-up work to verify, and they found some that the AI model said that were, false positives. but then they found some additional false negatives, or positives that were designed, but the machine didn't notice them. So they only found, they say, the low-hanging fruits in this attempt. So they believe there could be thousands more out there.
Wow. Yeah, I was going to ask you, is there more work to be done to create a complete map of this area of the world and all the geoglyphs?
Oh, yes. And they actually think that what they've done with AI is going to be useful for archaeologists all over. We already know that LIDAR has been able to fly over Amazonia and find huge geoglyphs out there, like whole villages and cities that were unknown. I mean, the old story was that, this is a native area where you have these natives running around with loincloths and just hunting monkeys and stuff. But actually, they're finding evidence of civilization out there that was unknown prior to the use of LIDAR. This has also happened in Cambodia with the temples hidden under the jungles and stuff. So yeah, archaeologists are going to have a field day using aircraft, drones, and AI to determine evidences of human design.
Yeah, that is fascinating. And those listening to our podcast can actually go read about your coverage of what they're finding in the Amazon rainforests. That's at evolutionnews.org as well. Well, do you think AI can be used constructively to further intelligent design projects and research?
Well, this is a very controversial question. And, I listened to Elon Musk talking about AI and the dangers of it. And yeah, it's got to be truth-seeking. He stressed. And if you get AI that gets good at lying, I mean, who knows what can happen. So yeah, it's only a tool. And another thing about the design inference is that it is agnostic to morality. In other words, we're not trying to detect whether a design was a good design or a helpful design, but just whether a design exists. And so, the ethics of a design has to be left up to other fields like ethicists and, moral philosophers and theologians, perhaps.
Yeah, yeah. Now, we'll encourage listeners to go check out some of these geoglyphs in this area themselves. But what sort of pictures and imagery were captured in these fascinating monuments?
Well, they're very puzzling. The large line geoglyphs tend to be animals, and they include things like birds and cats, snakes, monkeys, foxes, killer whales, and fish.
Hmm.
But then the smaller ones that tend to be the relief type with rocks lined up in images, they tend to be smaller, and they tend to have a lot of things like human motifs and decapitated heads. And one that I thought was confusing was the knife-wielding killer whale. So yeah, there are some puzzles to solve about what these people were trying to communicate. Maybe they were just having fun. Maybe this was their hobby of making art, or maybe it had a religious purpose. We don't know, but that's beyond the capabilities of the design inference itself.
Yeah. Well, you do make an interesting point also at the end of your article. You note that ID is equally valid at detecting evil designs and good designs. It doesn't discriminate as to why or how or who. What did you mean exactly by that? And can you give us another example, perhaps?
Well, the clearest one is you're a forensic scientist trying to determine whether somebody died of natural causes or was murdered. Let's say that a LIDAR specialist flies over a region and finds evidence of a mass grave. I mean, that would be an evil design, but it would be unnatural as opposed to just some natural forming fissure or trench or something. And you could look at a crater and determine whether it was a bomb crater or whether a meteorite struck the Earth. So the latter would be a natural cause. The former would be an intelligent cause, although a malevolent intelligent cause. So again, the business of intelligent design is just to define whether something was designed or not. But the ethics of these things are left up to other fields.
Yeah. Well, if you are interested, listeners, in learning more about the design inference and how to apply it in your own life or field, as David mentioned, a second edition of the design inference was recently published, completely revised and expanded, and that came out in 2023. So you can look for that at discovery.org or anywhere you can find books. definitely a resource you're going to want to turn to. Well, David, this is actually the first time we've talked on ID the Future, and it's a pleasure to unpack some of your writing and your thoughts on this topic. And I look forward to the next time we'll do it.
Great. Good to be with you. Thank you, Andrew.
Listeners, read more of David's work at evolutionnews.org. And to get straight to his work, from the evolutionnews.org homepage, click the Writers tab near the top and click on David's image and name. That's evolutionnews.org. A wonderful, wonderful resource. Lots and lots of articles on all the topics related to evolution and intelligent design. You're going to want to bookmark that and visit regularly. Well, for ID the Future, I'm Andrew McDiarmid. Thanks for listening.
Visit us at idthefuture.com and intelligentdesign.org. This program is copyright Discovery Institute and recorded by its Center for Science and Culture.